Hello and welcome to another edition of Power of the Pen. I am Lawana Bradford, and for those of you that have been following us for the past 6 years on E360 TV, you know I love all things books. I love bringing authors to the table, get their perspectives, help shift perhaps even your perspective when it comes to life, business, whatever topics on the table. And today I have a special guest. Jason Dennen will be talking about his book, and I'm going to let him say the title because it's pretty powerful. But his book really goes through his journey, a journey of discovery and recovery. And we've all been there where we kind of hit that wall at times. But this one is a pretty terrifying story that he's going to unpackage for us, where Jason is a Christian, a speaker, an author, an adventurer, explorer, one of those who loves extreme sports. He's a triathlete, and he took a third jump, and that third jump did not fare well for him, to the point that doctors didn't expect him to live. In fact, he became a medical phenomenon. How did he even survive this? And so we will get back in just a moment to introduce you to Jason Dennen and his amazing book about 8 days till sunrise. How's it going, Jason?
Good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Here's your book, 8 Days Till Sunrise, and I'll let you read the rest of this for us.
Sure. 8 Days Till Sunrise, a true story of survival, rebirth, and discovering my purpose in life.
You know, I sat in on that title for a moment, and one of the things that we hear so many people talk about now, Jason, is I'm trying to find my purpose. I'm discovering, uncovering, trying to figure out which way I should go. What did God intend for me? People are praying the prayer of Jabez, but they're finding themselves stuck, and they're stuck in the rut of routine. Even fear has caused them to be paralyzed, that they hear a calling, they hear a beacon, if you will, internally, and they don't heed it. And then sometimes there's a wake-up call. And I'm not saying this situation that happened to you was a wake-up call, but maybe it was. So can you tell us a little bit about when you moved to Colorado, you enjoyed skydiving. And in your book, you said, had you known before you took that third dive that your life would have changed in the way it did, the tragedy of the moment, that you weren't certain if you would have taken the dive. And then we'll get into a part of your book where then you say that that accident was probably the best thing that happened to you. So can you walk us through what happened? I mean, obviously that wasn't your first time skydiving.
Yeah, that was my 327th jump, was the big jump that we'll talk about. So I skydived quite a bit at that time, pretty much every weekend. And the first two jumps of the day went without any problems, as normal. And I jumped out the third time of the day, and I was coming in for a landing on a field I landed on hundreds of times before. When I got to about 150 feet off the ground, a huge gust of wind hit me from behind, picked me up, and made me overshoot the landing area. And I hit a fence, broke through that, and right behind it was an airplane hangar. And I hit that going about 30 miles an hour. So came to an abrupt stop, let's say.
Yeah, that's, I can't even imagine that, as you said, going 30 miles an hour. And then when you think about just the rate of force and impact, when that happened, was it, and I just want to do this for the audience, was it like you hit the hangar and then immediately you were unconscious, or did it take a moment for your body to realize I'm in a state of shock, and then you woke up in the hospital?
Right. So when I hit the fence first, which is 10 feet in front of the airplane hangar, I remember that completely. It was a 3 wire bands, like a cattle fence. So it comes tight, breaks, and then it's almost immediate because I didn't get slowed down at all when I hit the building. So pretty much I hit the building. I remember myself saying, I'm okay. I guess I was saying it to myself because I couldn't have been saying it to anyone else. And then I blacked out. The first thing that I said, now I didn't know I said this. I had to be told months later what I said. I was laying on the ground and people were over to me within seconds because where they packed the parachutes was only about, let's say a couple 100 feet away. So they saw me hit the building, heard the big bang, and they're trying to figure out if I'm okay or not. And they start talking to me. And the first thing I said is, don't call anyone. I'll be okay. Just give me a minute. And I had no recollection that I said that because I was completely blacked out. But the only thought I have is I went into fight or flight mode, and my body
Hmm.
just took over. It's almost like when you fall down on ice, right? And if you stand up right away, you're like, oh, nothing's wrong. And I think that's what my
Right.
mind was trying to do. Although I wasn't going to get up for a really long time, but I was fighting for my life right away because the major injury when I hit that building, I hit it on the left side and 10 of my 12 ribs broke, impacted my heart with such force. My heart broke out of the sac it sits in, called the pericardial sac, and ended up on the right side of my chest and all twisted up. And when I made it to the hospital, so they flew me flight for life helicopter 50 miles to the nearest level 1 trauma center, which takes care of the worst accident victims. Doctors would later tell my family, like, we've never done this surgery on anyone before because when people's heart moves from one side of to the other, something disconnects and they die instantly. People die at the accident scene. They never make it into the hospital for them to even try and save them. So they couldn't figure out how I made it even to the hospital for them to do the surgery. And it was the first time they had ever done it. But besides that, 20 other broken bones, 3 other organs also had to be fixed on top of the heart. And they intubated me into a coma for 8 days to protect me from moving or disturbing anything they fixed at the time. So it was pretty traumatic for sure.
Yeah. I don't even know if there's really a word that describes that. I mean, like you said, internally, your organs shifted, twisted, and you were a medical case that doctors were really doing this for the first time and did so successfully. Now, my question to you was, because you are a man of faith, were you a Christian prior to the accident?
Yes. Yeah. I grew up in the church. So I was no stranger to being a man of faith. I would say right before the accident, I was working a ton of hours, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, and at that time I wasn't actively going to church. Doesn't mean I wasn't praying every day because I was praying every day. So it's not like I had lost my faith or anything like that. But a few weeks before the accident, I was kind of really feeling lost just because I had lost purpose in life, working so many hours. You don't realize all these little decisions you make in your life lead you away from God, little by little. It's not like you're making a purposeful decision to say, well, I'm abandoning what I think is most valuable in life. But the reality is, little by little, you chip away at that. And one day you wake up and say, how am I so far away from the things that are so important to me? And so a few weeks before the accident, I was praying, and I always prayed for strength every day because I was working so many hours. I was just, my health was going downhill, and I didn't know how I was going to get through the next day. But I wasn't really being honest, because the honest was that I was lost. And I said, Lord, I'm lost. I've done it my way for too long. If you lead me, I'll follow. Now, I didn't realize how powerful that prayer was going to be, because 3 weeks later is when I crashed into the side of that building. But it was the greatest gift ever given to me, for sure. I might have been still in that place of overwhelmed and lost for years. You don't know. And this kind of put a stop to how I was living. And I had to lay in bed and not move for 3 months with all my injuries. And all you have to do when all your distractions are taken away are think about the things that you were missing in life before the accident and how you're going to correct this. And luckily, I got a second chance. And what do you do with this gift that's given to you, beyond yourself? Not just a gift for me, but what can I do with this gift to help other people through their greatest challenges? And I'm not sure I would have understood their greatest challenges without going through the toughest thing I ever went through first. So I was guided by scripture all along, even when I was in the coma and I couldn't possibly be thinking straight. Um, And, you know, it was just like going through trials, here to test our faith and develop our perseverance. We won't be tempted beyond what we can bear. And it's like that gave me the calm in a place when, because you're in a coma, you don't know you're in a coma. You're just in some dark, deep, dark place, or at least that's what it was for me. And I was visited by hundreds and hundreds of nightmares where people were with me, unwilling to help me and leaving me for dead. And I had to decide whether I wanted to live or not. And, you know, all along that time when I wasn't sure what direction to go, I was guided through that coma and how to come out the other side. And certainly without my faith, I don't know what would have happened. But luckily I did have that faith and put the trust in God, and surrendered and said, I can't fix everything myself. I need your help.
Yeah, that's beautiful. We're going to do a quick break, and we'll be right back to talk more with Jason Dennen about 8 days until sunrise. We are back with Jason Dennen talking about his book, 8 Days Till Sunrise, a true story of survival, rebirth, and discovering my purpose in life. Jason, would you mind, for me and the audience, taking a moment to read a part of the book where you mentioned that you felt that this actually was a gift, that it was a good thing that happened to you?
Sure. Okay. You could say skydiving almost killed me, but it also allowed me to be reborn and step off the treadmill. Take a deep breath and think about how I turned down the wrong path. The accident was a blessing. I got to see what I wasn't happy about in life before it was too late. I still had time to reevaluate life and try to get back on the path I wanted to be on. No matter how much I had neglected my relationships over the last few years, all my friends and family were there to support me and be with me when I needed them the most. My parents and siblings flew out in those early days to be with me. Friends started visiting once they knew I was out of the coma and it was okay to see me. The get well cards started pouring in from so many people, and sometimes from people I didn't know. The prayers continued to pour in as they had since the news of the accident spread. I was weary from all the regret of what I had let my life devolve into and who I had become. While lying in bed in the darkness, I felt that this was the first time that I had been able to take a deep breath and relax in years. I thought how sad that was. Suddenly a weight was lifted off me. Life became simple again. Survival, getting better, rebuilding myself to who I wanted to be, and thanking all those people that stuck by my side was all I needed to worry about. Lying in bed and not being able to move may have seemed like torture. For someone as active as I was always used to my body. I always used my body to relieve my stress, whether it was running, hiking, biking, climbing, or jumping out of planes. The blessing of not being able to walk or move was that my normal coping mechanisms were taken away from me. I couldn't deal with my problems by running and getting that endorphin high or spending a day jumping out of a plane so I wouldn't have to face the unhappiness of my life had become. When you can't do anything other than lay in bed and not move every day for weeks at a time, it forces you to confront what makes you unhappy. I contemplated the ways that I had disappointed myself with where I had allowed my life to take me. I had to truly confront my problems without any break or distractions. I had to beat myself up mentally, make myself feel the pain and regret. Changes are never made when you are happy or content with your current situation. I needed to tear myself down and make myself raw and sore. I had to beat myself down mentally until I retreated to a fetal position and could take no more punishment. Only then could I reemerge and build myself back to the person I wanted to be, the person I needed to be, the person whose life was spared by God to come back and be someone he was glad he saved. The person that he brought back to serve him and glorify him. There you go.
Thank you for reading that. You said something that I think some people might challenge. You said that you had to beat yourself down mentally,
Hmm.
basically stripping yourself from all things that you knew, your comfort zone and how you handle stress. And you said that it was sort of like this self-punishment, when you could take no more punishment, only then were you able to reemerge and build yourself back to the person you wanted to be, the person you needed to be, the person whose life was spared by God to come back and be someone he was glad he saved. Walk us through just that whole mindset where you felt that was needed, that you, and I'm thinking, spiritually, God talks about you can't pour old wine in new wineskin. And so you were on this journey of rebuilding, but first getting rid of the old foundation and pouring a new one. Walk us through that.
Yeah. So when I had to lay in bed for 3 months, it was the hardest thing I ever went through, but it was the best thing I ever went through because, as I say, you really stripped away from everything else in life, and you're forced. I think in our lives, we're um, there's so many things out there that can distract us from what we really need to be thinking about. And I think that I was somewhat, I wouldn't call myself a victim, but I was in that circumstance, whether it was work or all these other things that were distracting me from really just sitting there quiet and thinking about my life, and use all these things like jumping out of an airplane or running as a masking agent to mask the things you really aren't happy with, but it'll get you through the day if you do those things, because it diverts your mind away from the things that you really want to be thinking of. And when you're laying in that bed, there are no distractions, because all I was doing there through the day, survive, and then the rest of the day you're laying there and going like, what do I do with this? What am I supposed to be doing here? And really, I was weary and burdened, and God gave me rest. Gave me physical rest, not mental rest. So I was like, the gift is laying here and rebuilding myself into a better version of myself that I wasn't before. Now it's a whole new challenge when you get out into the world and all these distractions come back in your life. But when I'm laying there, I wasn't thinking about all the great things that had happened in my life. I guess I because there were a lot of great things that happened over my life before this accident, but really I just went straight to, here are the things you're lacking, here are the things you need to be doing better, and just over and over replaying that in my mind of, how do I not slip back to where I was before this accident. And I had to rebuild the mindset of how I was going to deal with this and how I was going to make myself better. And it's kind of one step at a time. You don't all of a sudden change in a day. It's all these little
Right.
changes over time that rebuilds that foundation. And because you don't solve a huge problem in a day. And at first I thought that was, in terms physically, that's what I was trying to do. And that's really not possible. But the same way you're rebuilding yourself physically is how you're rebuilding yourself mentally and spiritually at the same time. So it was just one day at a time, and it was hard, because you really tell truth that you don't want to hear, things that you are failed yourself at, and you should have done a better job and you didn't. And I said, I have a second chance. There's lots of people that don't get a second chance,
Right.
and I better do something like this. So it was just a day by day. Just for a while, it was just really saying, thinking about all the things I wish I'd done better, and how do I fix those things, and how do I not do that going forward? Because so yeah, it was just a day by day thing, but it was rough to go to, and I hit some dark places before I was able to start building myself back up.
No, yeah, yeah, definitely. I would imagine so, going to that dark place of the soul. Um, Now that you've written this book, you're sharing your story, and individuals, you put the contact information below how you can connect with Jason, as well as get copies of his book. Go to jasondennen.com, Facebook, Barnes and Noble. But Jason, what I want to ask is, how have you changed now that you've written the book and you're telling the story? What type of feedback are you getting? How is it shaping you, knowing that this story is helping to empower other people, maybe see hope in the darkness and in the chaos in their own lives.
Yeah. Well, I would say that one of the big changes was before the accident, I was someone who really kept stress in and figured I need to handle this myself. I didn't share things unless people asked. Um, and the difference is, I said, you can't be like that anymore. You need to share your story. And one of the things I found out while I was in the hospital, and really kind of the light bulb turned on, was people from the hospital would always come in and ask me about the story. They said, "We can't believe you're alive. Tell us what happened." And I would tell the story, and at first it was kind of turned into a burden because it would make me relive the story over and over again, and it was hard. And then one night, I'm laying there by myself, and I say, I'm thinking about the story, and I realized that instead of thinking about how it made me feel, I started thinking about what the reaction was every time I told the story. And the reaction was I would be vulnerable with someone, and then they would start being vulnerable with me, things they were going through with their kids or their family, or the fact that they're in this hospital all the time, and they put all this effort into patients, and some don't make it out alive, and it's a heavy burden. And I kind of thought, wow, I didn't realize the power of those words until I started speaking them. And I didn't realize what the power was until weeks later, after telling the story so many times. And I realized, if you're quiet and don't share the things that I learned from this situation and try to help someone else going through their most challenging time, it was a waste that I ever went through it, because I wasn't going to do anything positive with it. So I said, this is something you were looking for purpose in life, and God showing your purpose. You had to go through this, and now you can help someone else in a way you could have never helped them before, because you wouldn't have had enough intimate knowledge of how it is to go through the toughest time unless you went through it first. So that's when I really discovered really the power of words and the power of being vulnerable, the power of sharing things. And I went from recovery was about me to recovery is about all the people I could help if I could first come back from this. It's like you can't expect people to listen to your advice unless you're first willing to take your own advice to come back from this difficult situation. So I said, first I need to help myself before I can help anyone else. And then I realized, that starting to speak or visiting people in the hospital, or seeing people in slings or on crutches, and I would just go up and talk to them, which I would have never done before because I'm not an outgoing person. Normally, I'm a very introverted person. But I was like, no, this is part of it. You have to go out of your comfort zone and go and walk, because you never know what you can do helping someone. And sometimes it's not about talking to them; it's about just listening to what they want to
Exactly.
share with you, which is an amazing experience. And really, the book, I had no intention of writing a book, because people would say, you should write a book about this. I said, if it's about me, I'm not that interested in writing it something. I'm not looking to boost myself up. And then I spoke at a church, and when I was finished, someone came up to me and said, their friend had opioid addiction, and they liked what I said, and they thought that they could benefit from those words. And my first suggestion, I said, well, I'll go and visit them if you want. And they said, no, they won't let you even in your door. And they said, do you have anything written down that has this same message? And I didn't.
Mm,
And you kind of have this thought of how you think you're going to help people, but then you realize you have to listen. It's not about how you want to do things, it's about how people
exactly.
need to hear the message. So I said, if I had this written down, I could have helped that person, but because I didn't, I could only do so much. So I went home that day, and within 2 days, I said, you need to start writing this, because that's a sign that says it's not that what you're doing is wrong, but maybe there's people you're missing out on that you could really help by having this written down. And that's an example that just happened after I spoke, that shows you, well, I'm missing out on the people I could help if I don't write this down. So within 2 days, I just sat down and started writing, and then it went from there. So having a great purpose in life is when I was lacking purpose, lacking focus, I'm just lost. And then when you have this purpose of helping other people, it's you wake up in a different way every single morning. You're driven in a
Right.
different way. You'll push yourself harder than you could have possibly done before. It's like when you have a purpose beyond yourself, you have strength beyond your own strength. So yeah, it's been well, it's not over. It's keep going. I'm building and building and trying to help more people as I go, and learning new lessons for myself as I go, and how
Yes.
to help people in different ways. So it's an absolute blessing for sure.
Well, Jason, I can't believe we're almost out of time. There's much more that I wish I could unpackage with you, but I want to first say thank you for sharing yourself. You're just a bright light, and for those who are listening that are going through whatever it is, what it could be physical trauma, mental trauma, emotional trauma, and you're just in that dark space and you can't see your way out. I encourage you to, number one, get with the community that's going to support you. Number two, if you're in a state of crisis, make sure you get with professionals who can help guide you and bring you to a safe space. And number three, surround yourself with good reading material that gives you hope, encouragement, and inspiration, because God loves us all. And I believe that the same gift of second chance that he gave to Jason, he has for each one of us. But sometimes we have to be willing to step out of the box, right, Jason?
Yeah. Sometimes going through a trial is the best thing that could possibly happen to you. You might not think that at the time, but in retrospect, you're just like, this is a tremendous, the greatest gift I've ever been given, and I don't know where I would be without it. So,
yes. Well, thank you again, Jason. I wish you much success, continued success with your book, with the stages that you are going to present on, and just continue to share your story and build hope, because the world really needs it, and they need voices just like you.
Thank you so much for having me on. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. And we will see you all next week for another edition of Choose the Challenge, where we'll bring forth another great author in their book. And just remember, in life and in business, when your vision intersects with opportunity, success is inevitable. Until next time, be well, everyone.
Power of the Pen with Luana Bradford, expanding the impact and influence of authors from around the world. If you want to change the world, pick up your pen and write, said Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Books are uniquely portable magic. Power of the Pen spotlights authors from around the world. Listen as authors share messages that educate, motivate, inspire, and entertain. Join us each Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern on e360tv.com.
From the segregated military to modern movements for justice, this book uplifts the stories often left in the margins. With a rare blend of poetic grace and historical insight, Bradford moves beyond retelling American ideals. She reimagines them through the lived lens of those too often pushed to the margins. Black women who carried burdens and dreams, indigenous ancestors whose sacred truths still echo, immigrant allies who stood shoulder to shoulder in faith and sacrifice, and unsung patriots who, despite betrayal, still believed in the promise of America. I pledge allegiance is a love letter to resilience, a reckoning with history, and a call to rise, not with bitterness, but with clarity, conviction, and hope. It's a reminder that patriotism is not silence, it is speaking truth while holding the flag in one hand and faith in the other.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Power of the Pen. And I'm so excited because today on E360 TV, we have the awesome privilege to speak to a renowned author, J. Leonard Costner, and his urban fiction book entitled, actually it's a book series entitled Legacy. Now, the interesting thing about authors is I always like to find out their origin story. Now, Jay has an amazing ability to take his lived experience as an American, living abroad, his athletic prowess, along with his artistic talent, and he has now created this storytelling genre that kind of tinkers on the edge of perhaps quantum physics, sci-fi. We'll be right back and unpackage Legacy series with J. Leonard Costner. How's it going, Jay?
Going fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Welcome to Power of the Pen.
Exciting.
So let's just dive right into this. First of all, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us. I want to just ask you, because in your bio, one of the things that you really wanted to emphasize is you said that you were born in the U.S., yet shaped by your European lived experience. So if you don't mind, take us a little bit on that journey. How did you end up being in Europe? What parts of Europe? And how has that influenced you in becoming an author?
Okay, so probably start from the beginning. My father was a professional basketball player. So he played in the NBA, was drafted by the Bullets, and then also played for the Sixers, and then spent most of his career after playing the NBA for a while overseas. So I was born in '89, and at 6 weeks old, we moved to France. So for the first year of my life, I lived in France. The next 2 years was in Italy, and then 9 years in Athens. And that's where, that's how I got to Europe. And, the entire time I'm there, we're spending a lot of time with, service members and the American embassies and things like that, and just really being embraced by each different country and culture that we're living in. And it has a lot to do with, obviously, my dad being the larger than life figure at 7 feet tall and this great basketball player, and it was just an amazing experience going to school over there. But I think being immersed in that culture and, walking around, Italy and Greece and just seeing these 3,000, 2,000-year-old, structures that, are wonders of the world. And you're just, walking past these things, and, it's not like you're taking it for granted, but even at my young age at the time, it was still, an amazement to me, like, hey, that is the temple of a god there who, in my young age was like, oh, well, perhaps this person is actually a real person, So I think, a lot of that perhaps went into, the story, as well as, a lot of different things too that we'll, hopefully get into.
I love that. I'm a military brat, so I can relate to your story. We actually lived in Italy for 6 years, so from kindergarten through the 6th grade. And what part of Italy were you in?
So we were in Udine in northern Italy, and then we were in Montpellier in France, and then Athens in Greece. Yeah, so I went to school over there, and it was the curriculum is much different than here. It's a big focus on language and science and math.
Yes.
And for the metric system over there, and come back here, we don't have that in the U.S. and learning 3 languages. And now I speak English and terrible New Jersey English. So, it was just
No, I hear you. We lived in northern Italy as well. We lived in Verona. My father was at the embassy, and then we moved down to Naples. And it's interesting what you said is not necessarily taking things for granted, but when you're young and that's just your world, right? You're among all this ancient history and artifacts and buildings. it's just part of your everyday being. And for us, when I would go to school, people think of the Great Colosseum. And it's like they only think that there's one, but there's numerous Colosseums in Italy. And literally, it was 5 minutes from our house. So I would pass by a Colosseum every single day. It's like, doesn't everyone?
Everyone has that in their backyard, right?
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about just that experience, being exposed to history and other cultures at such a young age. How has that shaped your storytelling?
So I think for specifically legacy, it really is a central part of the theme. It is, at its core, a celebration of cultures and, just the people who make up the lineages that, the characters come from and all the experiences that they go through. One thing or another thing is very important for me as I was writing the story and really translating this message, because I've been channeling it since 2011, which, we'll dive deeper into. But, there's no weak female characters. There's no damsels in this story. They're equal in physicality and ability to everyone else. No culture is, spoken about in a negative tone. There's no need for race, sexuality, or religion to be a crutch for storytelling in this. It's literally about, human will and our place in this world. And there's also a love story, which is fantastic, honestly.
Well, one of the things that just in reading some of the summary of the book, it appears as though, like you said, there's no hierarchy, right? From culture, male, female, but there is a focus on, and this is my translation, the divinity within, the power within, the choice within, right? And how we can shapeshift our realities as we choose. Yet you focus on history and its influence and impact, as well as its struggle with where we are today. I'm going to ask you a very interesting question. Most people would read this and think, wow, this is just a great urban fantasy, sci-fi type book. But those who put on a deeper lens, kind of think about the movie The Matrix, right? There was a deeper underlying story that was there. Some people just saw the action. Other people saw a hidden message. What's the hidden message in Legacy when it comes to people today?
So it took me, honestly, till I've just completed the 7th book. And it took me until I just completed this book to really, truly understand what the message is and what my purpose was for writing this series. It's that there's a conditioned belief, I believe, in inadequacy in humanity. And the fact that, for the majority of people, we'll never realize our greatness because we are led to believe by everything that we encounter that we're not good enough to succeed on our own, on our own volitions. And, for me, for Legacy, for this, story, it's hopefully being a mirror to ourselves in that, for example, Alexander the Great conquered the world at 27 years old. For me at 26, I was, having a shot at the NBA after I had my leg reattached and my pelvis reconstructed. So there's greatness and there's things that we can, accomplish if we believe in ourselves. And the only way we can do that is by reflecting in and looking and saying, hey, this is within my capability.
You said something about belief in self. So one of the things when you talk to mindset experts, they talk about, say the affirmations, as a man thinketh, so is he. Or you think about the secret, law of attraction. But there's one element that's like the secret sauce. I can think all day long, but if my belief isn't in alignment then the movement or the momentum that I'm seeking isn't going to be there. I want you to think about that as you talk to us a little bit about the character Luke Hart. And is this character a little bit of you, a little bit of Jay?
So the character is a little bit of me, and in the sense of he's a reflection of myself, of, a message that I was, again, a purpose that I was given. So in 2011, I suffered ego death. I've had a series of near-death experiences in my life, 14 to be exact. The first one was when I was, on the delivery table. My mother coded on the table with me, and we both went through that experience together. And then, suffocation because I have a small esophagus, and most recently February, when I had a 104.57 fever for 2 days, and I was texting one of my doctors, and he was sitting there urging me to go to the, to urgent care because I was, he said, "You're actively dying." I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I was just going to power through it, but, whatever."
Since you said actively dying, let me pivot right.
But with that, it was there was a surreal experience that happened, during that period. And I find out afterwards from my mother, like, "Oh, you have a history of 104, high fevers every February for 7 years." I'm like, "Oh, well, that's news to me. You could have told me about that." But, it's, I think these are some of the things that, kind of went into the channeling. So when I suffered this ego death, the life that I knew from basketball was completely done, in a sense. As my identity was wrapped to it, I sacrificed, I bled for it, and then I'm sitting there with a limb that I can't move, even though I'm staring at it, and it just literally won't do anything because it, disconnected inside, and they had to go back in and reattach it. So for 30 days after I had surgery, I was bedbound, and it was a 2-year recovery process. But for 30 days after the surgery, I had this reoccurring dream that started as a dream and felt like a dream, and then turned to more of a memory. And in this memory is where the story came from. And, now that I've had this most recent near-death experience, and I've, consulted and talked with another doctor who had put me in contact with somebody else, there's more understanding of, what I wrote and, how these things come about. And one of the side effects of this most recent near-death experience was full-blown synesthesia, something that was, kind of shaped the way I wrote prior, but now it's, as I'm writing, the words and the scenes turn into brushstrokes on the canvas. So Luke isn't me, but he is me in message. And my purpose is to deliver this message in the form of the cyclical nature of Spartacus, and the need to have somebody, challenge the idea that we're meant to be slaves in some capacity, or, beholden, or, kept down, not achieve our greatness.
Some individuals would say that when you have near-death experiences, and like you said, yours are multiple from the time you struggle to take your first breath, that it's literally, and I'm spiritual, so it's literally you getting the opportunity to touch the divine, right? When we think about, there's different planes that coexist, right? We are in our space and time, but there's things happening outside of the space and time. And it sounds like each time, whether you were aware or now you're even more sensitive to it, that your journey was translating. You were going through a metamorphosis of sorts. And like you said, this book number 7, the number 7 is quite interesting, that now you've identified the core why these series exist, or this series exists.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the near-death experience, and researching near-death experiences, mine was a very different experience than what I hear on mainstream. So I don't know, compared to other people's near-death experiences, what they are. But for there's a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning, and even as as a child and thinking about back to all the other instances, one of the things is I have anxiety about flying, and long story short, that's because, well, I had essentially had a premonition back when we were moving back to the U.S. about flying back. Now, there was only one direct flight from Athens to New York back then, and we always took it, and we always sat first class, all that stuff put up by the team, and I just couldn't get on the plane this time, and we had to change our flight and get a connecting flight with on a different flight, and the flight that we ended up coming off of was the TWA Flight 800, the one that. So there's a sense of purpose, sense of I'm supposed to be here. Although after the near-death experience, I don't necessarily feel connected to this reality in the sense of, myself has been dissolved after the ego death. So now I'm aware. I'm very aware now that I exist in infinite amount of realities, and because I see these books as oil paintings in a gallery, there's a infinite gallery of different works that I can walk through. And for me, this gallery could just mean it's more that I'm supposed to do, or people also going to contribute to this universe that I'm trying to create to Marvel, to rival Marvel, the Marvel universe, because I've created a tangible superhero, not something that came from space or has these superpowers that we will never amount to, but it's the people that we descend from who created the words myth and legend, who we share blood with.
Right. Yeah, this is some of you are wondering, what are they talking about? I'm a little confused.
No, I'm very aware how this sounds,
but I encourage. We are here with J. Leonard Coster. We're talking about his series entitled Legacy. He has already written the 7th book, and this, again, it's urban fantasy, but it challenges you. So if you haven't heard of him or are curious, I encourage you to. The contact information is below. Reach out to Jay, but also get the book, and it really challenges you to assess how you view your life. Are these limitations that you placed on yourself real or not? I think there's a great opportunity, Jay, for you using this medium that you've been gifted with, this storytelling media. You are, as you said, it's an artist, and you're using a lot of artistic terminology even when you're describing this journey, that I believe it will help other people pick up their own paintbrush and that clean canvas and start to redesign on purpose, redesign with intention, redesign with commitment. And let's talk about commitment with you. You've done number 7. Is that it with the series? Will there be more? What are the next steps for Legacy?
So that's it for now. 7 actually is going to come out before 6, which I've actually started and kind of put on the back burner because I was writing both at the same time, and then 7 just felt like the message needed to come out more. My team and I recently had a opportunity for a movie opportunity, so we're exploring that. Audio books, now that 7 is done, and I'm not going to write 6 for probably a few years, just because there needs time to settle in with where the world has come to. Right, 7 is going to be the Pandora's box. It's going to end one storyline and open up the entire universe to unlimited possibilities. But there's so much coming that I welcome anybody who wants to ask questions, or if they feel like they want to read or anything like that, to reach out to me. I am, again, being an artist, this is going to be a very artsy thing to say, but I can't hold art ransom. So even though I need to, sell books, obviously, and things like that, in order to, fund, trying to build things out. If somebody was to reach out to me and ask, hey, can I read the book, and you don't have any means of getting it, I'll send it to you for free. It doesn't matter to me. It's more about, you taking your time. My relationship with time has changed very much. I don't feel time the same way that most people do, but if you take your time and actually want to commit to, consuming this thing, I hold that very dear, because that's very special. So if you reach out to me, we can talk, whatever you want, advice, doesn't matter. I will send you and give you as much, encouragement and anything that I can that you need from me. But yeah, there's a ton more coming, and the Legacy universe is going to rival soon the Marvel universe. But I feel like it's going to be have more of a global connection.
I like that. I'm definitely going to tell my cousin is an executive with Marvel. She's been with them for 30 years, and she's also an artist as well. Yeah, I'm going to tell her what you said, that get ready. You guys have a rival on the horizon. I want to ask you one last question, since we're almost out of time, and you mentioned what's next for the book series. And you also stated that you don't view time in the same way. But for our viewing audience, if you were able to look at a crystal ball and see yourself in 5 years, what would you be doing? And number two, what would you be saying to the world?
So in 5 years, probably the first movie will be either made or premiering. And I would be saying to the world, the same thing I'm saying now. We all have something innate in us that is greater than our perception and what we're conditioned to believe. For me, being a basketball player, being in that life, and being born with a broken hip, which is I found out. So I was born with a broken hip, and my entire time playing basketball, I'm mounted to such high, regard on one leg, and the entire time I was having to prove myself right while people were trying to compare me to my father or my brother, saying I'm not pushing myself hard enough, even though I'm, giving 150%. I'm literally pushing myself through all the pain that I can in order to be this person. So there's a sense of greatness and purpose within us all. And, if you can't see that, then please talk to me, because I'm sure I can see it within you. And I just think that, I think that's it, really. There's something special in us all, and we just have to remember.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jay. We're here with Jay Leonard Costner discussing his Legacy series. Keep an eye out on him. For those Marvel fans, get ready. There's going to be a new king on the block. I'm predicting that.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And to our viewing audience, thank you for joining us for another episode of Power of the Pen. And we will see you next week. And just remember, when your vision intersects with opportunity, success is inevitable. Bye for now.
F. Scott Fitzgerald stated, "Don't write because you want to say something. Write because you have something to say." There are thousands of people waiting to read your book and hear your message. Be a guest on the Power of the Pen TV series. To complete your application and schedule your interview, call 404-618-2824 today. The world is waiting for you.